Hello. Oh, I see the live now. We are live. Hello. I am Taylor B Barton. I am the author of The Ninth Life. It's coming out in fall, in September 15th, and I'm super excited about it. We're going to talk about beat sheets today, which are basically, to say it lightly, the lazy person's way of outlining. Not really. They're actually super important. They're very cool. They're really useful little tools. And they're really great for people like me. I don't like to outline. Outlines terrify me because when I finish one, I'm like, wow, I have all of this work to do. So I like to use beat sheets, especially for revisions and especially to get started. I definitely write by the seat of my pants, and I'm sure a lot of us do that as well. So these are all the books I have written with beat sheets. And I can't wait to talk to you guys about it. So let's get started. I even made a beat sheet for our beat sheet conversation. Basically, what they are little reminders of what you want to put into your manuscript, what you want either chapter by chapter or act by act, if you're looking at really large scope stuff. And they encompass really important parts, not necessarily the nitty-gritty details that you would put into an outline. They go over general emotions, tone, mood, questions that you want to answer, and they drive your plot forward, and they help you with pacing too. So we're going to talk about that. First of all, in a beat sheet, you want to know where you are. So where are we is the first question I always ask. What setting? And let's see, what time is it? Okay, it's 2:02. Where are we? The setting where you're at is kind of important because it dictates where your characters are going, what they're using to get there, how we're going to get there, and where we're going to end up. So where are we? What are you doing? Where have we set these characters? Where are they starting? If they're starting in a house, if they're starting in the woods, if we're starting with a prologue where it's kind of a flashback, you want all of those things to be little outlines in your beat sheet. So let's say we start in, since we were just talking about it, Los Angeles. You would write that down. We're in LA. But what does your main character want? That's the next question that goes into your beat sheet. So we're in LA with so-and-so, and what do they want? So let's say, what's a good character? Let's say Harlow. Since I didn't get to play her in the role-playing round because I had a family emergency, but I still love her, let's do our tropey girl, Harlow, who is in Los Angeles. And Harlow wants to get to a music festival in San Francisco. So we're going to put music, San Fran. That's our next little beat, little heartbeat of your book. Harlow wants to go to a music festival in San Francisco, but she's in LA. What do they need is the next beat. So you can have a want, but there's always kind of a need, right? Your character can want something really bad, but you know in the end as the writer what they need. So let's figure that out. What does Harlow need at the music festival? What are they going for? Is she looking for freedom? Let's say that. She's looking for freedom. She feels kind of suffocated by her parents, right? We've all felt that. So she's looking for freedom. That's your next little beat. Harlow's in LA. She wants to be at a music festival in San Fran, and she's looking for freedom. The next beat. How does she get there? How does your character get where they want to go? And that always brings in conflict. It brings in more characters. It brings in your pacing. There's lots of things that you can incorporate in the how do they get there question on your beat sheet. So how's Harlow going to get from Los Angeles to the music festival in San Fran to find her own brand of freedom? Is she going to take a bus? Maybe. Is she going to meet this like really grungy hot girl that's like kind of, you know, a punk at school that no one really talks to. And she's like, yeah, I'm going to the music festival. Yeah, that's interesting. So maybe Harlow does that. Maybe she's like, I don't really trust this girl, but I got to get to this music festival. So I'm going to get in her car. All right, Harlow goes with hot punky girl in her VW Bug, because we're all about vintage here. There we go. How do they get there? Harlow's going to, oh, you can't see me. Harlow's going to go with the punky girl. So Harlow starts in LA. That's where we are. She wants to get to a music festival to find her freedom. Can't get to San Fran alone. We've entered another character. Punky girl with the VW Bug. Who's going to drive her there? So there we go. We have our first beat, right? These are all of our heartbeats of, let's say, the first chapter. That could absolutely be your first chapter. Now we're going to do beats for tone and mood, emotions, conflicts, solutions, and all of these things are going to answer questions that you might not have thought of, because writing by the seat of your pants, you're like, I have this amazing idea, got to do it. But if you don't have these little heartbeats, you're just going to start writing and maybe end up in a corner, which is okay. It's okay to write yourself into a corner. I've done it many times, but you got to have a way out. And sometimes, segueing here, you can create a beat sheet in the middle of a draft. I do it all the time. You can create a beat sheet for revisions, which I just did because I wrote a book that had like 28 characters and 4 plot threads, and my editor was like, this isn't gonna work. So I came up with a beat sheet with her help, because editors and critique partners and everyone else in your life is gonna help you figure these little beats out. And now I have a solution to these little problems that I've created in my manuscript. And those beat sheets are what did it for me. So let's talk about tone and mood. So for a book like this, right, it's not a spooky woods book. This isn't a fantasy book. So you're not going to want like a super mysterious tone, right? This feels kind of rom-com-y. So what's your tone? Let's say it's light with a little bit of angst, right? I actually like this idea. I might write it. Thanks, guys. So put a little heart next to that. Light with a little bit of angst. Emotions. Harlow's looking for freedom, right? We're back at that third beat. So what emotions is she having? Let's say she's 18. She just graduated. Figuring stuff out, right? As I go. She's 18. She just graduated. Let's say she's, she's ace. She's asexual. And really wants to explore that. She really wants to have her first kiss. She really wants to be understood, and she wants to understand herself as well. So she knows that this music festival is really queer friendly. She's going to meet lots of friends. She's going to get, out of this big city and start over. So she's going to give it a shot. So those emotions. So newness, change. Let's see. Excitement. She's nervous. All of these things are tying into a rom-com. So let's go with that. This is now a rom-com. We have decided. But what's the conflict? What beat can we use? Can we still stick with freedom? Probably. Freedom from her parents. So that's a conflict, right? Has to be. So her conflict is going to be that her parents don't want her to go. Parents want her to stay, go to UCLA, stay close to home, grow some roots. They've always been kind of scared of traveling, scared of losing her. So that's it. There's the conflict. Her parents are homebodies and they want to keep her close. They're a little bit overprotective. Haven't really let her spread her wings and jump from the nest. So that's it. Overprotective, super loving parents. Got it. So she's rebelling for the first time. What a teen thing to experience. I rebelled for the first time when I was like 13 and a half, but I can still relate to this. So that was a joke. Everybody laugh. Then we're going to answer some questions. So with this, we've got overprotective but loving parents, newness, change, excitement, a little bit of nervousness. It's a book that's light and happy and about self-discovery, but it's also got some angst. So we're going to answer questions. Those are the emotions. Those are the conflicts. Let's loop them back in. We have to loop them back to Los Angeles. We loop them into the music festival. We loop them into this freedom. Everything has paired together somehow. with our little beat sheet. And that's going to drive us forward. The direction. That's the last part of this second little beat sheet I've got here is direction. So this has to point us somewhere. Harlow is now in the car with this punky girl. Does their car break down? Probably. It's an old bug. So they've got engine trouble. They get stuck. Got a good trope. They can only afford one hotel room. There's only one bed. There's only one bed. I know. It's one of my favorites too. Anyway, the direction will start to kind of fan out the questions you have about characters and the questions inevitably that readers will have. Who are they? How do they handle any type of conflict, any type of emotion, questions they have about themselves, questions they have about the world around them, and how do they change or grow? So take these questions with you as you're creating beats for other chapters. And you can do that, let's say, you can do that when you're done with the first 2 chapters. You can do that as you're writing. You can do that before you start a chapter. If you have an idea, you can always create a little beat sheet like I just did. Like this, literally, it's super messy, but like that's my beat sheet right up here. Oop, right up here. All these things just listed, just messy scribbles, but they worked. I got a first chapter down. I know a little bit more about this character that we just came up with her. Harlow is right here. I didn't know much about her to begin with, but just talking it out, we figured out where she's going, who she's going with, why she's going, what she's going to find when she gets there, maybe. Is she going to find a sense of freedom? Is she going to miss her parents? Probably both. So we linked that with why she's leaving, her overprotective but loving parents. Now it probably seems sort of like an outline, and it is, but it's not as scary. You're doing it chapter by chapter, beat by beat, idea by idea. So I'm still writing by the seat of my pants, but I have a little bit of a direction to go in so that I'm not lost. I don't get lost. Because a lot of my books where, like, let's talk about Open Operation. Beep. This is my baby. This is the first book I ever wrote, and then I rewrote it because I had no outline and no beat sheets. But when I started using beat sheets for that book, it unraveled so much easier. I have a huge cast in that book. Everyone wants different things. And when you make beats for each character, when you make beats for each chapter, each arc, each emotional investment, everything gets laid out in front of you without the commitment to an entire story outline. There's also, you can also have an outline that you go to create your beats. You go to your outline, you see something like this. This is one book that I haven't written yet, but it's my witchy bug book. See this? That's a little scary, right? That's a bunch of stuff on there. It's got the first chapter, it's a prologue, it's got the character who's speaking, it's got everything on here. So I would just take what I said, where are we? What does your MC want? What do they need? And how do they get there? And I would take those beats, put it in an outline in my Microsoft Word or Scrivener, and I would go from there. I would just start writing. I would take from my outline, make it a little bit easier, less terrifying for me, and give it a shot. That's all you can really do. That's what beat sheets are there for. They're your little guides. They're your little guides that you've made yourself. And they're not going to, they can be changed. They're not going to dictate exactly where you go, but you have them to look back on. Where did I start? If things go in a different direction than you planned, just go back and look at your beat sheet. You might be able to doctor it to fit where you want to go in the end, because books change. They always do. Sometimes you don't stick exactly to your outline or exactly to your beat sheet, but you just look back, you incorporate where you wanted to go in the beginning with where you might be in the end. And sometimes you can find a really cool solution with your original ideas and where you ended up. Let's see. That's pretty much what I had planned out for y'all. So I'm good to start with questions. And let's see, our first one, where can I find examples of beat sheets? Honestly, I Googled, and you can find some really good ones online. Everyone does them differently though, and I would recommend just starting a little outline. You don't really, I wouldn't recommend going off someone else's, because sometimes there's like the hero's journey, which doesn't really work for every book. Just write out your emotions, bullet points. You don't have to make it a super formal thing. Just a couple bullet points of what you want the book to be, where you want it to go, and then break those down into how you feel about it, how you want your characters to feel about it, where you think they'll go in the end, where they might go. And it can look like anything. It can be, you can draw little clouds around things. You can make it super messy. You can make it super formal. But I wouldn't use anyone else's beat sheet. Just try and start one of your own. If you do need an example, I will show you mine. Like I said, they're just bullet points. That's all they are. And when you Google them, that's probably what you're going to find. You might find some worksheets with like fill in the blanks. Those are great too. I know that there's some cool writing prompt books that's available at Barnes & Noble. I have a couple, and those are great for beat sheets too, because you can look where you're supposed to write something about said prompt, and you can try and make a little beat sheet from the prompt. That's always a really good exercise if you're not confident enough to really set your ideas into an outline yet, or into a mini outline like a beat sheet. You can just use someone else's stuff, kind of like fan fiction, and figure out how you would break down their book and then incorporate that into your idea. Could using beat sheets ever make a story too formula or predictable? Okay, I see. Yeah, can ever make a story more predictable? How can I avoid that? So that's why I don't like outlines, right? I don't really like outlining because I see too much of the story and I don't have an emotional connection to it. That's why I've always written my books by the seat of my pants, because I, excuse me, I surprise myself, right? We love surprising ourselves. But I have friends who have like full outlines, like 2 pages, like 1,000 to 2,000 word outlines of each chapter. And I'm like, how does this not make you extremely afraid? Well, I mean, and it helps some people. But I don't think that beat sheets will make your book too predictable. I think that they actually help you see the architecture of what you're about to do. So you can see the framing. It's not necessarily getting into the nitty-gritty like an outline would. You're just putting down emotion. You're putting down setting. You're putting down characters. You're saying, this character feels this right now in this place because they want to be here with these people. Or they don't want to be here, but they have to get there with these people. That doesn't necessarily dictate what's going to happen in your book. It just tells you some things about your characters, your settings, and the mood you're setting for the reader, so that you can have somewhere to go. You can have something to follow that doesn't get super messy, and you won't write yourself into a corner. If you do write yourself into a corner, you can come out of it quickly because you have that little bit of information that you've stowed away for yourself. Where in the process do beat sheets make sense? In the planning stage or the revision? Oh, I love this question. Basically, I think beat sheets are good for both. Usually, because I am a super messy writer with zero training, I like to use them for revision. I will write out my book, usually send it to my critique partners, and they will be like, whoop, Tay, this doesn't work, or this works great, but not here. And that's when I go back and make a beat sheet for these chapters. That way I can see what I've laid out, right? You have a book, you finished it, you can go back and read it, you know where it starts, you know where it's gone, and you know where it ends. And that makes taking those chapters and breaking them down into beats a lot easier. But it also means you do rewrites, which writing is rewriting. Everyone knows that. It's just a part of being a writer. It's part of being an author. It's a part of this industry. It even happens in fan fiction. Writing is rewriting. When I would send my fan fiction to my betas, they'd be like, this didn't work. I would have to rewrite it. You know, you want to make the best story that you can. And those little beat sheets, when you're done, you can keep a beat that you put into your first draft and just add new ones. I like to use words like reframing, or, you know, restructure this, or cut this and add this to a certain scene. Like let's use our little beat sheet that we just made here up on the spot. Harlow goes to San Fran, and, you know, let's say she gets super drunk at a party. You know, she didn't really want to drink. and she still does because she wants to fit in. You know, that's kind of silly, and it's not something that I would really put into a book. Did I put it in there just because I needed to move the plot forward? And let's say my CP, let's say Rosie is like, hey, Taylor, this doesn't sound like you. This doesn't sound like a book you would write. Let's revisit that. What else can we put in here to drive the plot forward, to make a case? And I would take that beat and say, cut this, and I would add a new one into my little beat sheet. And say, instead, Harlow ditches the party and finds her super hot, punky girlfriend. Well, not yet girlfriend, but you know where I'm getting at. But she finds a super hot, punky friend over by like a Ferris wheel, and they get on and they talk and they have this really in-depth conversation, and she ends up talking about being ace, right? Like that's much better. And then they end up like splitting a beer or something, and Harlow's like, yeah, I drank for the first time, but it wasn't out of my comfort zone, and like I feel vindicated and challenged and rebellious. And that there's a beat. I just changed it. I just went back and used it for revision, and my original beat sheet still helped me get there. So I think they're really good for both. You can use them in the beginning. You can use them in revision stage. It really doesn't matter. I use them for both, and I usually lean on them more in revision stage. How do beat sheets compare to other plotting methods, like the hero's journey that you mentioned? How do you determine which plotting method is best for a certain work in progress? That's a really good question. You know, I think it just depends on the story you're writing, and I think it depends on writer to writer. There are, you know, I talked about my friend from before. He has like these incredibly complex outlines, and they help him so much. And I saw them and was immediately terrified, but they work for him. And that's what it's all about. It's about what works for you. Beat sheets are my favorite tool. I utilize them with every single book that I write. And that's just me. I think that they can be implemented into anyone's routine, but that's being really presumptive. I don't think that I should assume that everyone can use them. But I think, giving them a shot would help anyone. It would help them figure out what does work best. Sometimes with I can see a super high fantasy, high epic would need really in-depth outlining. But after that outlining stage of what 120 to 150,000 word book, you've got 1,800 Post-its all over your wall. Yeah, that would be extremely intimidating. So that would be okay to break down into a beat sheet. The hero's journey does work for some books. Works for a lot of books, actually. It works for tons of books. So I shouldn't say some. It's one of the most well-known plotting devices ever. But it still won't work for everything. The hero's journey doesn't work for a lot of my books, and that's fine. And it won't work for a lot of books that I'm sure y'all are writing. But you could always try it, see what happens, and then if you're like, this doesn't feel supernatural, break that down into a beat sheet, or break that down into an outline, or you could just write out a chapter without anything, without any help. You just have an idea, which I've done before. You just have an idea and you're like, I gotta write it. And you write it out, and then you figure out the rest of the story. Literally just happened with a proposal I sent out for my werewolf book. I had an idea, I put it on Twitter, everyone was like, write it. So I'm writing it, and I had to figure out where it was going. So I just wrote the first chapter, and everything unraveled from there. Then I wrote a synopsis or a summary, and then I started on my beat sheets. And I don't even have the whole book out in beat sheets yet. I just have it outlined up to the fifth or sixth chapter, just in little beat sheets. And I have the summary, and I'm going off of that. So sometimes it's best to write a synopsis or write a summary first, write a full outline, use the hero's journey prompt, anything. Just try and get there the best way that you can. It's all about trial and error. Once you find what works for you, it's kind of over with. You stick with it. There are some books where I've had to fully outline them, but it's really rare. So just have a bunch of tools in your arsenal. Should I show my beta readers or editor the beat sheet when I give them my manuscript? That's a super good question too. So I don't think you need to show your beta readers. I don't think you need to show your critique partners. unless they ask for it, or unless you're like, hey, here's half of my manuscript and here's the beat sheets for the rest. What do you think? I think if you're not finished writing your book yet, it's fair to share your beat sheets. I did just send my whole team my beat sheets for the revision for my 2021 book that I told you about. That was like, it's like 28 characters, like 4 plot threads. It was bonkers. And I took my editor's notes and I created a beat sheet off of what I knew about the book, since it was done from beginning to end, cover to cover, all finished, the first draft. And I took her notes, implemented her thoughts into my new beat sheet, and then I sent it to her. And I was like, hey, let's talk about this on Monday when we get on the phone. Here's what I'm thinking. So that she has access to, you know, the momentum, so of my pacing, of where I'm going, what I'm thinking, so that we can kind of take on this challenge together and figure out what's best for the book. So your editor, yes, I think you should share your beat sheet with your editor, especially for big revisions. If you have trusted critique partners and you're trying to really shape up a book and polish it before it goes to your editor, before you query it, yeah, that's fair. Share your beat sheet if you think it will help, or if you want their input on any of like the emotions, the tone, the, you know, conflict shifts, like, you know, like I said before, if one of my critique partners would have been like, yeah, this doesn't really sound like you, that's fair to share with your critique partners and let them in on that early on as you're writing. If you're like halfway through your manuscript and you're like, hey, I don't really know where I'm going yet, but I have this idea. That can definitely shape up a new manuscript. It can definitely lead you onto some different paths. So if you're open to that, definitely share it. How many beat sheets do you usually have for a book? I mentioned multiple beat sheets for different character arcs and emotional arcs. So I usually just have one working beat sheet. It will have different bullet points for different chapters, and I move those bullet points into the document with the manuscript, because my bullet points were like 5 or 6. That's it. And I also do make beat sheets for characters if I need to get to know them better, which you can totally do. It's kind of like a character Bible. I have character Bibles too. I would say one working beat sheet for setting and plot, and then one working beat sheet for character and emotional depth and character arcs. That will kind of help you figure out where you need to go and why they want to get there. I would have a beat sheet for like Harlow's past, why she feels these certain things, and what the impact that they have on her decisions, and I would move those into my plot beat sheet when it was time to, right before I wrote the chapter. Those things would merge. But it sounds kind of confusing, but it's really not. It's just one bullet point plus another one, you get an outcome. So Harlow feels really trapped. She wants to get to a music festival. You take those 2 different beats from 2 different beat sheets, your character beat sheet and your plot beat sheet, you put them right in your document. That's the first thing you see, chapter 1 and those heartbeats. And you start writing. And it's right there, a little skeleton outline at the very top of your document. So you can just scroll up and be like, where was I going with this? And you're like, oh, right, she meets that really hot girl. There we go. I'm about 2K in. This is the last little bit. I'm going to throw that in there. And there you go. Your beat sheets have helped you create your first chapter. Is it okay to not use all the beats on a beat sheet? Absolutely. You can, as you're writing, sometimes you'll be like, oh, this doesn't really fit here. Maybe I should move it. And you can totally move a beat to the next chapter, or to, the middle of the manuscript, or the end if you think it needs to come at the end, or you can just scrap it all together. Those can just be there so that you can work out where you want to go, or where you originally thought you wanted to go. But if things unravel as you're writing and you're like, oh, it doesn't really make sense anymore, it's just cross it out. No big deal. That's why they're so casual. They're so simple that, it's all for you. It's all your stuff. It's all your ideas, your thought process. It's there to get you through a manuscript. So you don't really need to dedicate to any of the beats. You don't need to. That's why it's not as scary as an outline. Just cross it out. You're good. How can I fix pacing issues at the start of the book without eliminating necessary backstory or foreshadowing that I'll need later on? How do I fix pace? That's a super interesting question. Let's see. I would say that's something you would need to write out. That's something that I would write out. Your pacing, I mean, this is where I'm in disagreement with most of young adult. Your pacing doesn't need to be super fast. You can have a quiet book. You can have a book that does have, does have foreshadowing, does have backstory, does have a prologue. All those things are okay. It can be a little bit slow in the beginning, and also you can just write it out as slow in the beginning and figure out how to fix it later. That's where those beats come in. If you write it out and then you're like, oh, I kind of took this beat where Harlow was like really angsty and like mad at her parents, and I wrote this like fight with her mom. It doesn't really need to be there, even though it's foreshadowing for what she's dealing with later at the music festival. Is there any way to streamline that? And I would look at beats throughout the chapters that I'd already written during the revision stage when I'm looking back at my completed book and be like, oh, hey, there's a dream she has about this fight with her mom later on, and it's only like 500 words. So why don't I cut this and just make her kind of like make a passive aggressive comment about it, and then move on, and I'll just keep this beat, or I'll rework this beat later so that it makes more sense. You can totally do that. That's the whole point of a beat sheet when you're in the revision stage, is to go back, see what you did, what you originally wanted to do, and where you ended up, and how to fix all that, how to take all those little details that you wanted and shift them around so that they make sense, so that they're in the right order for the book's pacing to be streamlined. I always feel blocked or overwhelmed when I try to use a beat sheet. Do you have any tips or tricks for getting past that? If you feel overwhelmed, you're probably not using your beat sheet. You're probably using an outline. Because I know that life. I feel that deeply in my soul. Trim it down. Just cut some stuff out. It doesn't have to be this super formal thing. No one is going to see it if you don't want anyone to see it. Just a couple things, like she's feeling kind of angsty today and we're at school. That's fine. Those are your beats. Good. Roll with them. They don't have to be super complex. It doesn't have to be like 3 full sentences about how she's feeling. It can just be like, feeling kind of shitty today. That's it. That's all it's got to be. It doesn't have to be anything else. So just trim it down, make it a little bit shorter, focus on emotion, focus on where you are, and focus on that. Where does your character want to be, and how do they get there? What do they need? Those are just like the very raw, feral, like simple things. The simple things of your first chapter, second chapter, any chapter are those questions. And if you can't answer them, then maybe you need to move on to another scene, or maybe you need to take a break from that book and work on something else. That's totally fair too. But if you're feeling overwhelmed about your beat sheet, then there's no sense in keeping it maybe as complicated as it is. And if it's still as simplified as it can get, then maybe it's not the beat sheet that's the problem. It's what's on there. Maybe you just can't. Maybe the beat sheet isn't working. Maybe these beats aren't working. Try something different. There's no harm in that. When and how did you first discover beat sheets? I didn't know they were beat sheets because I've been doing them for a very long time. Been like doing these short little messy outlines ever since I started writing. But I also started when I joined Twitter and saw like why Twitter and publishing Twitter. I noticed that a lot of people use different beat sheets and different like word count trackers and stuff like that. That's where I really started to see them being used. Tess Sharp uses like she's like profound. She does these amazing word count trackers. And she has a lot of them on her Instagram and on her Twitter. So definitely go check her out. She's like amazing when it comes to tracking her word count. And I believe she has like some Scrivener videos that show some of the way she puts together her books, and different stuff like that. When I started seeing how everyone else is working it, and like hers are very complex, very structured. And then there's some people who are just like, just going to throw it at the page. That's me. There's a lot of people out there that do it different ways. That's how I discovered it, just finding community in the publishing industry, online mostly, and then meeting my friends who were like, oh yeah, I had this deep idea for like 3 years. And I'm like, oh, that sounds really, it's a long time. Or my friends who were like, yeah, my outlines are like 6,000 words. And I'm like, that's like really professional. Here's my 4-beat beat sheet from chapter 1. And that's okay. They're all valid. The way I do it is valid. The way my friends do it is valid. Tess is like sets the standard. But there's so many different ways. And when you start making friends in the publishing industry, and especially on Twitter, on Instagram, you're going to start learning from your critique partners. You're going to start learning from different people, and you're going to start discovering new ways to do it and play with it. Try all different sorts of things, because once something sticks and you really like it, you'll stick with it, but you'll also start implementing little things from your friends and your community. And that's cool too. It helps build your craft, all of it. Could you use beat sheets for plotting a series? Absolutely. Yeah, you could use beat sheets like we talked about doing acts, act 1, act 2, act 3. You could definitely use beat sheets for that. What happens in the beginning, the middle, and the end. And then we segue, book 2, beginning, middle, end. These are all like just the overarching emotions, feelings, conflict, solutions, and where it goes. And that beat sheets would definitely help you look at where the characters start and where they end by, let's say, a trilogy. You would see that, the emotional development. Obviously, for a series, I would definitely recommend an outline, and then break that down into beat sheets, and keep all of your beat sheets, because things get lost in series. My trilogy, when I rewrote it, I was like, this is all messy. And I used my beat sheets to go back and thread everything together. So there will be a lot of stuff on them. So keep your beats for each chapter short. So like 3 or 4 beats for each chapter, because you're going to have let's say you're going to 30 chapters. So about 90 to 100 chapters in a trilogy, maybe around there. If you write about 2K a chapter, that's how much mine were. So I'm just using that as where I'm going off of. But yeah, you would use little concise beats. Keep them all in a document, go back, check them, and it'll help you fix plot holes, make sure that your character development's going where it should go, where you want it to go, and that you haven't forgotten anyone, that you haven't forgotten anything that's gone on, where you wanted someone to start, where they ended up, maybe it got a little lost. We can go back and figure it out, tie everything together. So yeah, definitely. I would definitely recommend it. Sorry. What is some of the best writing advice you received during your publishing journey? Not exactly beat sheet related. Let's see. Best writing advice. I've received some really good writing advice, but my favorite is keep your eyes on your own paper. You will see a lot of success on Twitter and on Instagram. You will see a lot of announcements. You will see a lot of, I just finished my 110,000 word manuscript, when you've never written anything over 60,000 words. Keep your eyes on your own paper. Write your book, write your short story, write your novella. It doesn't matter. You are here to write the story you want to write and need to write. And you will find the people that are going to usher that book out there and help you do it. Don't focus on anyone else, and don't let anyone else's success or anyone else's productivity define where you're going, because this is all a game of luck. So you could be the most talented person in the world and not get a book deal. You could be sort of talented and get a book deal. Look at American Dirt, and it happens. So just do your best and work on your book and make your beat sheets and outline as much as you want or as much as you don't want, and try and be happy for your friends and for your peers. But always, 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 first and foremost, be happy for yourself and what you're putting out there. Character Bibles. Oh yes, I love character Bibles. Can you talk a little more about character Bibles and how they work? So for character Bibles, what they are, it's basically like to go back in a series and see, you know, a character's eye color, a character's tattoos, character's age, how tall they are, their first, middle, and last name, where they're from, if they always have something on them, like let's say like Brooklyn always has like a really big like a knife. So I would put that in her character Bible. Always carries a knife. They're the little details that you want to remember throughout a series or throughout a book that might be forgotten. So, you know, it just helps you keep everything where it should be, your ducks in a row. I have one for my Port Louis series, which is my adult series, under my pen name, because I have so many characters and it's all novellas that center a different main character, and I would totally get lost with all of these witches. I wouldn't know who's who. I wouldn't know who's got the cat familiar, who's got the ferret familiar. Like, I don't know. I would get super lost because I have 2 pen names and so much going on all the time. And it's okay to forget stuff about your books. We all do. It's fine. That's why we write it down. You write it down in a character Bible, and you can flip back to it. So let's say, you know, you get contracted to write this really cool IP project, you know, for like Disney, like a Star Wars book. Like they gave me, I'm going to speak it into the world that Disney let me write a Star Wars book. They have not yet. Maybe one day. I'm speaking it. So maybe. Anyway, so that's on my plate now. I might forget about the manuscript that I was working on, you know, 4 months ago. So I go back to my character Bible and I'm like, oh, you know, there's Harlow. And I, you know, oh, that's right. She got a stick and poke tattoo at that bonfire, and she's been hiding it from her parents for forever, and it's on her foot. You know, that's something that I might forget. It's in my character Bible, so I won't. How do you keep track of complex or elaborate settings? Is there such a thing as a setting Bible? Yeah, you know, that's a really great question. Yes, of course. You could totally keep a setting Bible, especially for like I was talking about epic and high fantasy, different continents, different countries, different languages. Absolutely, you should keep a Bible for your setting. I was just talking about Port Louis again, my witch books under Brooklyn Ray, and there's a few different places that are kind of magical and weird, and I definitely have those settings in my character Bible. So we could definitely say it's a setting Bible too. You want to keep track of where you are, where they've been, places you've mentioned, towns that maybe got mentioned that you might have forgotten about. For sure, yeah. Keep track of your complex settings and what goes on there. Magical woods. Why the trees are magical, what they can do, what language they speak. Definitely keep track of all that. All right, last question. That was it. So guys, that was the last question, and we are good to go. I am so glad I got to talk to you guys about beat sheets. I am going to flash my little beat sheet again and show you all how messy it is, because that's totally okay. Look at that, super messy and still good. If your beat sheet looks like that, that's great. If it's super, you know, super simple and crisp in a Microsoft Office Word, that's great too. It totally doesn't matter. If it's an outline and you've got these taped up all over your walls, that's great too. Just break it down into a beat sheet, look back at it for revisions, and don't give up. The beat sheet is there to save your life, and it will, I promise. So thanks so much for stopping by. I was super happy to get to chat about one of my favorite writing tools today. Thanks for joining all of us at Write On Con, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your con.